let's get started. Thanks everyone for joining, and we'll have some more people dropping in here as we go. Really glad to have this many people in this room here virtually together, talking about a topic that doesn't get a lot of attention. It's not something a lot of people think and talk about. It's about learning how to talk to anyone, learning social skills. And what we'll do today is we'll actually go through a framework, a theoretical framework that you can use to get massively better at talking to new people. Now, usually this is something I do in live events. I've been coaching this for many years now, and most of the time it requires people to be together in person in a real world setting. And that's still true. This thing really works if you practice it in the real world. But of course, after coaching it for many years, there are some theoretical insights that I extracted from all these years. And now it's time for you guys to get the distilled essence of all those coachings, teachings, own learnings that I've made with clients and with my own coaches. So be prepared to actually learn the high-level principles that will help you navigate this space and actually get you to a point where you can go up to someone that you don't know at all in the real world, on a train, in a cafe, in a bar, and start a really compelling, interesting conversation. I've been obsessing about this subject for a long time now, and actually I've studied every single nuance. And so here you will get the not just theoretical insights, but also practical exercises that I've learned that make the most difference in learning this, the exercises that actually propel you forward the most. I will not be able to go into every detail, but I'll give you a high-level overview and hopefully also give you a lot of motivation to actually implement these learnings and switch from these content consuming modes that we're in here, where we absorb a lot of content, and actually to apply those lessons and go out into the real world. A little bit about my background before we get started on introducing ourselves and getting to know each other here in this room. I've been in this space for 10 years now, and the reason was that I was actually forced to learn social skills. I was extremely shy as a young man. I was very insecure. I think it was mainly because of my Indian background. Growing up in Germany with the Indian family, it wasn't easy. I didn't know how to navigate the social space. My mother didn't really allow me to go out and date and be social. I was supposed to study. And so I got really, really good at that. I think it was also helpful that I had quite severe acne. I think you can see it in one of the pictures here. So I didn't think of myself as attractive at all. I just thought I was really ugly. And that was a really hard, cemented belief. And I couldn't get rid of that. Even as I grew up and my acne disappeared, I still felt that insecurity that no one, and especially no attractive woman, would like to actually talk to me. And so it took me a long time, and throughout my 20s, when I was studying and getting better at university and rising in the ranks of the academic ivory tower, I just realized that if I continue like this, I will remain lonely for the rest of my life, and my life will be pretty miserable. And so I started experimenting and trying what other people told me to try, like online dating, signed up for a profile and got really kind of scarring and jarring experience where I just felt even more lonely and more rejected, because I felt like I'd opened myself up and I'd basically stripped myself naked in front of the internet, and no one liked it and no one got me a match. And so I felt even more rejected after that. I stopped that after a few weeks, and then I tried the other things that people told me to do, like go out and just go to parties, but it didn't work for me. I was extremely unable to have fun at social settings, and the only thing that actually kind of worked was alcohol. So when I tried drinking and drinking a bit too much, I realized that there was someone inside of me who actually liked to be social. There was a social side inside of me, something that really loved dancing, loved flirting, that was actually good with interacting. But I could only get it out after 3 or 4 beers. And so I didn't want to grow dependent on that. I didn't want to be someone who can only be social under the influence of alcohol. So I stopped that and said to myself, I'm gonna work as long as it takes to get that social side out of me naturally. And that took a long time. It basically meant going out and interacting with people whenever I had the opportunity. And I think it was around 3,000 interactions. I actually started counting at some point. And at some point, I just got better and better and started really understanding the social dynamics of interactions. And I started studying that, and I started getting really deep and theoretical about it. And at some point, I just realized that it doesn't feel like work anymore. It's something I really want to do. It's something I enjoy doing. It's something I enjoy exploring. It became an adrenaline kick and almost a hobby for me to talk to people. And so that's when it kind of flipped. And that's the kind of transformation that I would love to support people to experience themselves. And that's why me and my co-founder Philip, who's here in this call, we started this project, Offline Dating, where we help people go through this transformation, assume this new identity of someone who can easily chat up a stranger, start a conversation, turn it into a flirt or a friendship or a business partnership, and have these kinds of complete, spontaneous interactions. Let's turn to the agenda for today. We want to do a short intro round here where we just have a kind of popcorn style introduction of who's here and what they're here for, get to know each other a little bit so that it's not just me giving you content, but rather a more interactive style, which is also what we want to be doing later. We want to be doing exercises, we want to be interacting here and using this time to actually train our communication skills and not just our listening skills. Then we'll go into a section where I'll explain core principles, the 3 core principles that I've extracted from coaching, and that has been like the main takeaway from the last 10 years, and I want to share that. And lastly, I would like to show you the anatomy of an ideal interaction. What does a really great interaction look like? And then in the end, we'll go into questions. Why offline dating? Why is it important to learn how to meet people in the real world? Let's get started with that. And I think there are 3 reasons that should be on top of everyone's mind. First, offline dating, meeting people and talking to anyone out there gives you unlimited opportunity. You can meet people anytime, anywhere. Every day is full of opportunities, and those opportunities, unlike dating apps, unlike matching services, unlike your friend circle, are kind of independent of external parties. You have access to those opportunities just by virtue of being a citizen in your city, right? Just by walking out, you have access to that. It's independent of someone else controlling it, independent of some middleman of some company controlling the flow of opportunities, which is what's happening on dating apps. This is one really, really important advantage. The second advantage is that real world interactions give you the chance to actually convey more of your strength and your identity, and especially for people whose strength doesn't lie in pictures. It's a way to get much better matches, because if photos is the main way to impress someone and you don't look great on photos, or you don't want to like optimize your photos and look great on photos, then of course in the real world you're going to get people to appreciate you more, because there you can play out your real strengths, which might be your personality, your stories, your aura. And that's something that was really the case for me personally. I don't look that good on pictures. I didn't get any matches on pictures, but when people meet me in the real world and they look into my eyes and they see my intense energy, which I can bring out if I want to, then they see, oh wow, I wouldn't match this person. I wouldn't probably swipe right on this person, but now that I see him, I want to date him. And that's what happened with all my partners and my current girlfriend as well. So the last real big advantage on learning how to meet people and talk to anyone is you learn a general skill set. You actually learn to be more confident in general. And that's not just going to help you with dating. It's going to transform your life. If you take this seriously, you will become a new person who doesn't just get good at talking to the gender that you're attracted to in dating setting, but also get good at talking to your own friends, get good at making new friends, get good at talking to your bosses or your subordinates or your colleagues at work. And so this is going to transform your life if you go down this path, and that's one really important aspect of meeting people offline. I want to make this point even more clear because a lot of people neglect the fact that if you want to get good at meeting people in the dating context, you have to get good at meeting people generally. You have to build a general social skill set. And I want to illustrate that with this picture that I used as the background picture for this event. Some people, they were like irritated by this picture, and they said, oh, why would I talk to that woman? She's not attractive to me. Well, those people clearly didn't get the point, and that's good that they probably didn't show up in this call, because they think that you can actually train communicating just with the people who are attractive to you, but that won't work. You cannot separate communication with people that are attractive to you from communicating to people in general, because what's happening in this picture is going to happen in the real world. You're going to meet someone that is attractive to you, but there will be people around that might not be that attractive to you. And if you can only communicate with attractive people, that's not going to fly. That's not going to come across as genuine. It's going to come across as super egoistic and kind of mean. And people will realize that you just learned social skills to get good at dating. And that's not going to come across as authentic and genuine. It's not a real personality trait that they will recognize. They will say, oh, you just learned these tricks. And that's kind of what it is. If you just use social skills instrumentally to get good at dating, that'll be considered as a manipulative tactic and a trick. And people are not gonna like that. And so what you want to develop instead is an appreciation and an enjoyment of social interactions for their own sake. And socializing with people in general can be extremely fun, and you can develop that ability to have fun during an interaction. And that's what we want to do here. We want to focus on building a system, a framework, so that you can actually enjoy social interactions in general. But how do you do that? Of course, for some of you, that's something that's kind of far away right now. You're still in a place where it's kind of hard to even start interactions. And so the key here is to develop a system that enables you to take it step by step and make small incremental changes. And usually it starts by just looking inside, looking at your mindset, and especially looking at your beliefs. Because the one thing that I found to be the biggest obstacle in going out, socializing, and allowing you to start growing is limiting beliefs. Beliefs that make you believe that you cannot do this for some reason or another. And so the very first exercise, before we even get started on the core theory principles here, is I want you guys to think for a moment, what are beliefs that you hold about yourself that stop you from meeting people in the real world? Just take a moment and think about what are those thoughts that are in your head that stop you from actually going and approaching someone when you go out, or when you're on a train to your work, when you're in a cafe and you see someone that's attractive. Think about that for a moment. And if you want to share them, here in the chat actually. That's amazing. I want to look at a couple of these and just illustrate the process of how to start taking a belief like this and questioning it and finding holes in it. And so, for example, one of them is I'm not tall, or I'm not tall enough. It's something that a lot of people think, that they're not in some way physically good looking enough. And so what you want to do with this kind of belief is you want to find counterexamples, because the belief in its full explicit form is if you're not good looking or tall, people are not going to like you, or interactions aren't going to go well. And so what you want to do now is you go to a club or you go to a party, you go to a bar, and you look around and you look for people who are having a great time and who are apparently being very social and very likable and very, very successful in the social life, and you look at their height and you try to figure out if it's really true that most people that are successful in social life are tall. And you'll find counterexamples. Maybe you'll find that on average, yes, maybe you'll find that most people who are really good at socializing are a little bit taller than you, but you will definitely find a couple of counterexamples in every single party that you go to where a really short guy or short person is having a lot of fun and having a time of his or her life. And so that should make you question your belief. That should make a little hole in your belief, and that way you can take the support away from that belief and slowly make it crumble. And that's what you want to do with all these beliefs that you have that are actually holding you back and that you know you can disprove. All right, let's take one more example. I have nothing to say. That's a huge one here. Okay, we'll get into that later. Nothing to tell. I don't know what to say. I'll just embarrass myself by stumbling and I have no idea what to say. Okay, so what is a way to disassemble and start breaking that belief? One way is you can actually challenge yourself and put a timer on your phone and say, I'll just say whatever I think for 5 minutes. And if you're alone in an elevator, maybe in a bathroom, in front of your mirror, I'm pretty sure that every single one of you can talk for 5 minutes straight about whatever is going on in their head, because that's one constant in human life. We have this monkey brain that keeps jumping around and creating new thoughts and ideas. And if you learn how to talk and how to let those out, you can actually fill a whole evening and just keep talking. And so you will realize that you can actually speak, you actually have a lot to say, you just don't know how to let that out in the moment when you meet someone new. And so that again should break your belief that you have nothing to say. You have a lot to say. And if you repeat that belief in your head, you're really not helping anyone, you're just distorting your own reality. And instead of saying, I have nothing to say, you can say, I don't know what to say when I'm interacting with someone. And that's a much better limiting belief than I have nothing to say. Okay, so pay attention to the ways you formulate your own beliefs, the ways you program your mind, because those turn out to be self-fulfilling prophecies. Those become reality. If you think that you're too small or too not good looking or too bad at talking, you will likely not be good at talking. It's a kind of beautiful mechanism when you go up to someone and you believe that you are really great, you will just radiate another energy. Whereas if you believe that you're a loser, of course people are going to think you're a loser, and then that will reinforce your belief that you're a loser. So those are self-fulfilling prophecies. Those are self-perpetuating beliefs. You have to be really careful about what you believe in and then slowly take that apart. The next step is to actually implement new habits, because in the end, if you want to make a real long-term identity change, what needs to change is your behavior, what you do on a daily basis, because that basically informs your identity. That will make your belief change if you actually do something that previously you didn't think you would be able to do. And so we'll get into that in the next part of the lecture, where I'll talk about what kind of habits you can implement and how you can implement them. And then the final goal of this process is actually to nurture a new identity, to create a new sense of self. That's like the collection of beliefs that you hold about yourself. And from being someone who thinks that they don't have a lot of social skills, you can actually work yourself up to saying, I'm amazing at social skills. And you can even feel like you don't do it anymore. You don't have it. You don't need to perform it. It's just a natural part of you. It's something that comes out of you naturally and you don't have to think about it. It's part of your new identity. It's part of your new mode of being. So that's what this process is about. Just to get you all attuned to what we're doing here. It's about identity change. Okay, Let's now get into the 3 core principles that help you understand how this process will work and how you can actually make progress in the fastest way. After we understand these theoretical principles, we'll also take it and apply it to a very practical scenario where we're talking about an actual interaction, and we'll talk about how these principles apply and how you can actually use them in your everyday life. But now first, the theory. There are 3 principles here, and we'll go through each of them. A short summary is: first, work on yourself. Second, give first. And third, convey your identity. All of these might sound kind of almost banal and very short, but they all carry a lot of depth. So let's go through them one by one. The first one, work on yourself. There's actually a more complete formulation of this principle, which is work on yourself until you believe that anyone would be fortunate to know you. So what this does is it addresses the limiting belief that a lot of people here mentioned, that I'm not enough, that I'm not interesting, that I have nothing to say, and that people will not like me. You need to work on all these things that you find worthwhile, that you want to achieve, that you want to change about your life. And you need to work on it so hard and so almost militantly with radical focus until you say at the end of the day, wow, I'm on a great path. I might not be where I want to be yet, and I'll never be in a place where I'll say, now there's nothing else I want. Humans always want to move forward. They'll always be on a growth trajectory, but you can look back at your day and say, wow, I did some cool stuff today. And I did some cool stuff in the last few years, and I really believe that. And I assure you that if you invest a lot of time and a lot of resources and take it seriously, you're going to have that feeling at the end of the day. You're going to feel like, I did something cool. And then when you have that feeling, it's really easy to go out and show yourself and say, I'm gonna just see who vibes with that. And if there's someone who doesn't like the kind of identity, the kind of strength, the kind of personality that I've built up, then that's okay, because I'm still happy with myself. I did something difficult today. I have a cool life, and I've worked for it, and I'm working on it, and I keep improving, and that's what I really care about. And you don't get hurt that much if other people can't appreciate it, because you do it mostly for yourself. Okay, work on yourself until you have that belief that you are actually quite amazing. Okay, and then you just go out and communicate whatever comes naturally. The idea of working on oneself is actually a bit more nuanced. If you take it seriously, there are different parts of yourself that you need to work on. One part is obviously working on your value. What do I mean by that? Your value. Your value is the things that you can give and offer to other people, that other people feel valuable, that feel valuable to other people. And so that could be working on your communication skills. That could be working on your fitness, your physique. It could be working on your storytelling and on your jokes and just on how you carry yourself, your body posture. There's a lot of different ways that you can add value to other people. For example, me giving this workshop is a way of giving value to others, right? And every one of you has some value to share. Oftentimes that's very connected to your career. It's maybe connected to a business or a job that you're holding. And that's something that you need to work on. And there's another aspect, which is how to communicate that, because you can work all your life, like many of my clients actually do. You can work really well on your career and do a lot of progress and build this amazing skill set, maybe in technology or managing a big company, but you never learned how to communicate your value and communicate that you are amazing to others. And so that's the little arrows that we put in here, the orange arrows. That's working on how you convey your value. And then the last part that you also want to work on is how do you actually put a boundary around your value, something that filters the value and makes sure that you don't give your value away randomly to everyone. That's also very important, because value is only going to be perceived as value if it is nicely surrounded by a strong boundary. If I just give out my value to everyone all the time, it won't even be perceived as valuable anymore. And this is something that happens when people get started and they just ask people for dates and for numbers right away. In the very first sentence of an interaction, they would say, "Hey, I really like you. I would love to go on a date with you." That happens a lot. And that's an example of someone not having a clearly defined boundary, because what you're doing in that case is actually you're giving away value, you're giving away your time, you're giving away your attention without having even checked whether the other person qualifies and actually deserves that and actually fits with your lifestyle. Okay, so this is something that gets ignored a lot. Some people do talk about building your value as a way to improve your social skills, but very few people actually talk about building your boundaries. And so keep these three things in mind. You need to build your value. So those are all the things that are amazing that you can share with other people. You need to build the skill of conveying that value. That's the orange arrows here, the communication skills. And you also need to build and strengthen the boundaries that you put around your value. So the kind of checks and the kind of filters that make sure that your value doesn't dilute and just doesn't get spread around and then doesn't become value anymore. Okay, this is principle 1. Principle 2. Give first. This principle is kind of a zoom in on the communication aspect from the first principle, because a lot of people ask, how do you start a conversation? What should I say in the beginning? I can't come up with anything interesting, right? And so the mindset that works best for starting conversations is you give a gift. And that gift is the starting point of every good interaction. It's a small value piece that you give out. You could say it's right at the edge of your boundary, because you give it out kind of for free before really knowing whether the other person actually deserves your full attention, your full time. But you give it out anyways, and you enjoy that process, and you do it wholeheartedly. I compare it to giving out a flower. That's actually an exercise that I like to do with clients sometimes. I ask them to just go on a train. We did this here in New York, and give out flowers to people. And you can see how people react, and it's actually quite difficult to make people accept that. And you can practice that. You can actually go and see how many people accept your flowers when you give them. And you want to really get good at this, where you can give a gift like a flower and have people accept it as something you're just giving away for free without any expectation. That's a skill that you can learn, giving gifts like that. And the same way you're giving a flower, you can give a compliment, or you can give an observation, or you can just give a wonderful hello, how are you, what's up? And you can give this, and that's the great start for an interaction, because it feels like, wow, this person is just giving me some value for free, right? He's just giving me a little piece of energy, you could call it. Maybe it's a good vibe, maybe it's a compliment. Whatever it is, it needs to feel like a little gift. And that's the start of an interaction. And then what happens next is the other person can basically decide whether they want to accept that gift. And if they do, then you have an interaction. Then you have a perfect start for an interaction, because then there is a small exchange happening. And so what that gift looks like will depend a lot on the context, on the setting. You can probably not go around and distribute flowers long term in the trains, but you can experiment with this and see what works for you. What kind of gifts work in different settings? In a train, for example, the situation that we have here, what works best for me and for the clients that I've seen is just energetic hello, good afternoon. And the reason that is that in the setting, it's not very accepted to talk to strangers. It's not something commonly done. And so a lot of people, they don't really like it, and some people say it's not a place to meet. So you want to be careful here with the gift that you're giving. It should be a small gift, just to check whether the other person is responsive, right? And instead of saying, hey, is it okay for me to talk to you? That's not a great way to start, because it's not a gift, it's a question, right? You can just give a small gift, like, hello, I just noticed your wonderful shoes. And that's a small gift. And then the other person can still decide if they want to accept that gift and play something back or not. All right. This means really that questions are not a good way to start an interaction in any case, because questions usually are not an offering. They're not usually giving something, right? Question means you want to know something. That's for you. And that's not a gift. That's not a great way to start a conversation in most cases. And there are other situations where a gift, the first giving, can be much bigger and should be bigger. For example, if you're in a bar or a cafe where it's kind of accepted to be talking to each other, just saying hello, how you doing, is a bit boring. It's not very interesting. It's too little of a gift. You want to give a bit more of a gift, maybe a compliment, maybe even like a little rant, or just sharing something that you realized and that you want to share. And that'll give people a better sense of who you are and will catch their attention. And it's okay in that kind of setting to give a big gift, because a club, like a social venue, is made for people to actually meet. So it's completely fine to give bigger gifts there, and it's very consensual as well, because implicitly people agree in a social setting, people exchange bigger gifts. So there, it's not enough to say hello, you should say a bit more, right? Yeah, it's a bit hard to go into the details here, but we'll go into this a bit later. And also we have a program where we teach the details of how this exactly works, and something we go in much more intensely there. Let's go to the third principle. The third principle is convey your identity. This is extremely important. And in order to convey your identity, of course, you need to know your identity first. You need to really know what kind of person you are, what kind of values you have, what is your value, right? Before you can even convey that, you need to know what that is. And that's something very, very few people do, and very few people know, that you can actually sit down and spend some time, and it makes sense to do that for a whole day. And just think about what kind of person you are. What are your values? What are your strengths? What are your weaknesses? What are your opinions? What are your beliefs? And then also to really believe that you are good enough. And then that is something that is super helpful for interactions, because people don't like to hear the same stuff over and over again. They don't want to hear small talk. They don't want to hear superficial stuff. They want to get to know people. And the reason that I put this picture here of Post Malone, a rapper, is that he's extremely forward with sharing his personality and conveying his identity, right? He puts it all over his face in the form of tattoos. That is a huge sharing of identity. It shows people, I'm this kind of person and these are my values. Look, I have them on my face. I don't have to even talk to you so that you know who I am and what kind of person I am. And I'm not saying you need to get face tattooed, but you need to get really good at conveying your values in your communication. And it's something you can do in the very first moments of an interaction. You can actually share what is important to you. And instead of sharing it in a way where it's generic, where everyone else would say, yeah, that's normal. Like, I like that too. You like traveling, I like traveling, everyone likes traveling. Don't say I like traveling, right? Say I love to go surfing in the Portuguese swamplands. I don't even know whether that makes sense, but you will have something that you enjoy, and it should be specific. And it should be something that conveys more of your identity than just a generic statement that everyone else shares. That way, you will also definitely scare away some people. You will actually have people who don't like that part. So Post Malone here, I mean, clearly a lot of people will run away screaming from this guy. And that's also part of why he's considered charismatic, because he doesn't care. That's important, because in love, especially when you're talking about dating, you want that kind of extreme reaction. You want people to say, wow, this is special, this is unique, this is different, I love this. And in order to get that kind of reaction, you need to risk that a lot of other people are going to say, I hate this. And a lot of people would look at Post Malone's face and say, whoa, no way, I hate this is stupid, this is disgusting. Maybe I'm one of those, but it's not important if a lot of people say, oh, you're stupid. What is important is that some people say, I love this. And to get those people, you need to polarize. You need to be willing to make yourself vulnerable and say stuff that is not exactly considered mainstream. It should be something bold. And so I want to do this as a small exercise here. I would love for you to put a short statement into the chat of something that you believe in, that's part of your identity, that's something unique about you, something that you believe in, and maybe a lot of people don't, something controversial that can be a great sharing of your identity. I would go ahead and say, my example is, I don't drink alcohol. Okay, that's something that's really not very common here in Germany, especially. Everyone drinks, especially in social settings. And I don't do that. It just doesn't make sense to me. I feel like I'm wasting time if I get too drunk, and I want to get good at social skills without alcohol. And so for me, alcohol doesn't make any sense. Now, if I say that to someone in a bar, you can imagine that a lot of people say, oh my God, you're crazy, that's stupid. Why wouldn't you drink? Everyone drinks. And I lose a lot of people like that. But the people that I like to hang out with, they will say, oh, that's interesting. Wow, you really managed to go out without alcohol? And so that's the kind of people that I want to attract. Let's hear some of your edgy, bold statements. We'll put them here in the chat. Small dogs are a waste of space. Even if I have lost, I will not give up. Yeah, there's another reframe of that, which is if I lost, the game is not over yet. So I didn't really lose. I'll just keep fighting. I'll just keep playing. That's awesome. That's awesome. That's a strong belief, and that's controversial. People with tattoos have some problems. Everyone kind of agrees with that, especially if you put them all over your face. There's got to be some problem here. I believe in nature because I feel there is a lot to learn from it. That's beautiful. So Munsu says everyone should try to learn conversational level English. I think that's not controversial. I think that's common sense. You might want to think of something that's a bit more edgy, something that is debatable, because that makes great conversations, right? That gets the emotions stirred up, that gets the resistance, that gets people to get excited, and that's what you want. And also I want to talk a little bit about Nitin's statement, I believe in nature because I feel there is a lot to learn from it. That's a beautiful statement. It's kind of poetic, right? But in the end, when you think about it, it's also not extremely controversial. Everyone would kind of agree after thinking about it for a few minutes. And so one way you can make that statement more interesting is to go more in detail and point out a certain part of nature which you learn something from. God, yeah, there's religion, that's right. Don't be afraid to bring up really deep and personal topics like that. Awesome. So yeah, I hate people who gossip is an interesting example, and it is one strategy to find controversial beliefs, to just look inside yourself and ask yourself, what do I really dislike? And maybe hate is not the best word because, yeah, hate is kind of unnecessary, but of course, sometimes we hate something and that's totally fine. But there's definitely things that we dislike. Everyone has something that they dislike. And if you don't have that, you're not looking close enough, right? And so you can think about what you dislike, and that will always make for strong controversial statements, because you will dislike something that's going on around you. And if you say that, you run the risk of being rejected, of course, by those people who like that. And don't be afraid of that, because that's exactly the kind of polarizing statement that will get you interesting conversations, and it'll filter out the people that don't actually match with your identity and that you don't really want to be friends with at all. Okay, Thanks a lot for the participation here. We'll go now into the next part of the lecture or the workshop, and that is the anatomy of an interaction. We want to take it to a more practical level now and talk about the actual mental processes that you can go through when you meet someone out in the real world, before actually interacting with that person, during the interaction, and then also afterwards. Those are 3 different phases. They require different mental models. Let's crack into that. The first one, what do you do before starting an interaction? You see someone, maybe they're sitting in the train opposite from you, and you find them attractive. You feel like, wow, I want to talk to that person. What do you do next? The very first thing that I advise people to do is you need to decide whether you're going to do it or not. And you can definitely say no. You can say, no, it's not the right moment. Maybe not today. I'm not ready for this. That's all fine. But what you don't want to do is stay in that limbo where you say, maybe I'm finally ready. And then you stay in that limbo for 5-6 minutes. And that'll really run you down in the long term. That'll kind of just grind you out slowly. It'll cause you to associate this situation of seeing someone attractive with negative emotions. Because when you stay in that state for 4 or 5 minutes of doubting yourself, thinking back and forth, you're just going to stir up a lot of negative beliefs about yourself. You're going to remind yourself of the lack of confidence. You're going to remind yourself of the lack of skills that you have. And that's just not going to help anyone, because in the end, you're not going to do it anyways. So I would challenge you to make a decision real quick on whether you're going to do it or not. And if you decide to do it, then you need to build up the congruency and the kind of willpower to say, okay, now I decided I want to honor my own word, so I'm going to do it no matter what. I decided that I'm going to do it, and my integrity demands that I actually do it. Okay, this is an opportunity for you to practice your own value of integrity, of being honest with yourself and decisive. And I know it's going to be hard, but you can really practice that. And when I got really good at this, it became almost a matter of honor for me to say, when I decided that I'm going to do it, I need to do it, because otherwise I'm basically lying to myself. I'm basically not taking myself seriously, right? And you don't want to take that one person not seriously, yourself. So once you decide it, you need to do it. And then it doesn't matter what the situation is, if there are some new obstacles, if the person starts moving somewhere else, you need to make it happen. And sometimes that means running. Sometimes that means talking to the mother or the whole friend group because they suddenly show up. And so that needs to be very clear that once you decide it, you're going to do it. Then the second mindset that you can repeat in that situation is, I am offering value. I'm giving a gift. That's the principle 2 we talked about. I am just giving a gift here. It's a small gift like a flower. And I don't really care if people accept it, but I'm gonna give it with my whole heart. I'm just gonna give it because it makes me happy to give that gift. And yeah, maybe that person will reciprocate the gift, maybe not. I'm just gonna give it anyways. That's a gift I wanna give into the world with my love. And that's the kind of energy that will make it most likely for people to say, wow, thank you, that's so kind of you, and then continue the conversation with you. Nevertheless, you don't wanna obsess about the outcome in this moment. You don't want to do it in order to get that person to like you. You want to just do it because you know that you have to do it for your own progress, because you know that you're going to get better by doing it. So let go of the outcome, let go of the result. You can just forget about the result, and all you care about in this moment is you decided, so you want to make sure you stay with full integrity and true to yourself, and you're going to give this gift. You're going to give this gift of your attention, your compliment, your joke, your line, whatever you have, your presence, whatever is in your mind, you just want to offer that. And you're going to give that. And that's all that matters. The outcome of whether they like it or not really doesn't matter in this moment. That's the third mindset before actually going up to someone. Now let's talk about what you can do when you are actually talking to them. You started talking. Here it's kind of too late to really strategize. Now you're in the midst of it, you're in the heat of the battle, and just like a gladiator fighting in the arena, it's too late to think. Now you just say whatever comes to you naturally, you say what you think. And of course that's really difficult, and we can't get into the details here of how you can train that muscle that makes you say what you think. That's something we go much deeper in the program that I'm going to mention at the end. But for now, just try to actually practice this on your own. Say what you think more. Maybe with your friends you can practice that, or with yourself. And then at some point you will be able to actually go out and talk to new people and just say what you think and not hold yourself back, because that's the only way that authentic communication works. That's what people appreciate, when someone can just say whatever they think without barriers, and they will be surprised and they will be impressed that you're able to do that. And that also means, again, principle 3, convey your identity. Convey whatever is present inside of you, and don't be too scared of scaring people away. That can happen, and people are going to appreciate if you take that risk of really sharing your authentic self. Then after the interaction, you're done, you did it. Whatever the outcome, it doesn't matter what the other person said, whether they liked you or not, whether you got a number, whether you set up a date or not. First of all, celebrate. I can't stress this enough, and so few people take this seriously, but every single one of the people that I saw transforming themselves, and even my own role models and coaches in this area, they stress this: celebrate. Make sure you have some kind of mantra or a pose, or maybe just a sound that you make in your head after overcoming your fear and actually going to talk to someone. It's a huge step. It's something very difficult, and you all know that it's very, very few people in the world who can do that. So the fact that you just did that, if you did it, needs to be celebrated. And what I like to do is I have just a word in my head that I repeat when I do something like that. I also use it in the gym, by the way, when I do my gym reps and I get into this phase where it gets really difficult. After every single rep, I say growth, growth. Sometimes I do crunches and it gets really hard. And you literally see me there saying growth, growth, growth. And that's the way I celebrate every single rep in the gym. And you need to find some other way, or even that way can work for you, something that works for you that causes some kind of positive emotions in your head for celebrating the fact that you just took this very difficult step. There's another way that I like to use, which is entering a little note. I even built a small smartphone application for entering a note after you talk to someone. And that's also helpful because that way you can also record whatever you remember from the interaction. You can also then, after celebrating the fact that you did it, analyze yourself a little bit and see what you could have done better, what didn't work out, what you want to learn from this, and what you want to take away from this. And that way you also create this kind of positive emotional feedback loop where whatever the interaction, whatever the outcome, you're going to have some positive emotions from that. And that's why it's going to become a habit. That's why it's going to become a new behavior that you look forward to. Instead of being scared of it, you know that at the end of every interaction, you will get a small positive feedback in your brain, and so you will look forward to it. Now, in the long term, how do you actually take this to the next level and get really good? You need to repeat this process over and over again. You need to take it very easy in the beginning and just start with very simple challenges for yourself, where you go up to someone and maybe you just don't have a lot to say, so you say, hello, how are you doing? And that's enough. And then you just say, that's a great win, and that's it. That's all I wanted to do. And then as you get better at doing that and you get comfortable with that, you raise the challenge level slightly and you make a compliment. And then at some point you will be able to say, now I'm good at giving compliments. Now I can actually say that I like that person and actually own my sexual interest and start flirting, because that's all that flirting really is, right? You just talk to someone and you communicate in a subtle way that you're actually interested in that person romantically. And then at the end of this process, you can actually get to a point where you feel comfortable talking to groups, going on stage, hosting workshops, going and actually running an organization. All these things are possible for each and every one of you once you get to that level where you assume a new identity of someone who not just does it, but actually is it, is a social being that loves to communicate, that loves challenges, that loves to grow. So this is something also we go into much deeper in the program, where we define the different levels that you can go through to grow step by step, so that you don't get overwhelmed by having to do something that's way too difficult for you in the beginning. Great, so this is actually the end of the slides, and it's time for us to now get into more of an open discussion format where we can exchange and discuss these ideas and also get deeper on anything that you feel very curious about, that you want to get to know more. But before we get to that, I'd like to just mention the possibility of actually scheduling a call. And this is something we offer for the people who stayed with us for this whole workshop. Thanks a lot for being here. And the next cohort of this program that I've been mentioning starts in March. And so we have a couple of seats free for that. 2 or 3 seats are still open for that if you want to get started right away on really excelling at social skills and taking this stuff seriously. Feel free to join and hop on one of those calls. Okay, let's get started with some questions. Ilya has his hand up. Okay, let's hear a compliment. Can you give me one in this moment? Great. So the response I would expect people to give is thank you, thanks a lot. Well, I like your shoes is okay, but it is a compliment that is not considered a big gift. So in some settings, people would say that's not enough of a gift, and that's also not enough of personality. And so in an S-Bahn, let's say you're in a train station, right? Maybe that is a okay start if you say it with a good energy. It needs to be said with a great energy, otherwise it's not enough. But if you meet someone in the train and you say, I really love those shoes, that might get them to say, oh yeah, thanks a lot, and laugh up a little bit. But if you go up to someone in a bar and you say, I like your shoes, it's not gonna fly, it's not enough. And so one way to make it more valuable, one way to make that compliment hit harder, is to make it specific and actually think about what you really love about those shoes. The cool thing about that is that it's a gift, but it also at the same time conveys your identity, because it shows the other person what kind of stuff you perceive and what kind of stuff you appreciate. It shows the other person what your taste is. And that's amazing, because if the other person thinks, wow, you have great taste and you like exactly the same thing about these shoes that I like, then that's already a connection being built there, right? And so I have these huge shoes. I have these huge shoes, like 5, 6, 7 kilo shoes. They're really heavy, they're black, they're like higher than often women's plateau shoes. And a lot of people don't like them. But when I see someone and they really look at those shoes and they appreciate that, I know that me and him or them have a great shared taste. And I will say, yes, I like you because you have the same taste. And then we'll talk about why we both like these shoes, and then that there's a real connection, right? So next time you make that compliment, I like your shoes, just make it more specific and don't be afraid to share exactly your thoughts, because your thoughts most likely won't be, I like your shoes. If you look a bit more closely, you will discover a lot more that you think about those shoes. You will discover that you're actually intrigued by the way the laces are patterned, or maybe you like the way that the heel is like slightly higher than the rest. And then going into those details just conveys much more personality and thereby gets people to take you more seriously. Mutsu, thanks a lot for sharing that. That's a great way to start a conversation. And I would like to add that you can even extend that gift of recognizing the artistic energy by explaining why and going into the specifics of what exactly made you feel that this person is an artist. And then I always back it up with even some assumptions about what kind of artist that person might be. Because once you do this a lot, you will get a lot of data on what type of people wears what type of clothes, does what type of things. And then you can always start with a guess about you are an actor. And that's a great way to start a conversation. It's like a gift, a compliment, and a controversial statement at the same time, you know? And it's funny because if they say, no, I'm not, you could actually say, well, you should be. Like, you have a gift, you have an amazing personality, you radiate whatever character, and then that's a great way to spice it up there. Yeah, you're right in some way, which is that there are certain constraints and there are certain social conventions, right? And I think we do this all the time where we think something, but then we don't need to say it exactly the way it comes out in our heads. We can always channel that energy and make sure it fits the vibe. And that's a matter of practice, finding out what circumstance, what setting allows you to use what kind of language. And if you're in a public setting and you don't know the person very well, yeah, you will learn very fast that being too direct in the beginning is just considered inappropriate and will get people to consider you disrespectful. And so you will just learn that you need to adapt the way you channelize what you think. And for example, in a public transport setting, you can still say, I really like your physique. That's basically saying the same thing, right? But in a much more respectful way. And if you're actually a few minutes into the interaction and maybe you're in a nightclub and people are having a lot of fun and you're dancing, then saying something more direct can be quite appropriate, okay? And so it always depends on the context, and you need to be aware of that. I'm not saying you can say whatever you think unfiltered all the time. That's not what I'm saying. It's a matter of practice. Yeah, and that's absolutely fine. And so the interaction can definitely start on that superficial level. It's just important for every human being, of course, to be recognized also on a deeper level. So you want to move it quickly to getting to know the person on the deeper levels, because if you just like someone based on their physique, it can come across as very, very cheap and low standards if you say, now I want to date you and I want to get your number. Well, you only know me from the inside. That shouldn't be enough. That's again a matter of boundaries. Your boundary, let me include this. Let me just finish this. Your boundary needs to be, I want someone who is physically attractive, but also someone who matches my personality. So you need to find out in the interaction whether they are also compatible with you in terms of personality. But Zaid, I'd love to continue this conversation. Really looking forward to talk to you. Let's give the other we need to give the other people a chance. Okay, so the question is, what do you do when you have a bad day and you don't have a good emotional state? How do you still manage to meet people and get something across? Yeah, there's a warm-up routine that I recommend for these cases. In order to get yourself to a place where you even feel like interacting again. If you just feel down and you don't even feel like you have anything to share, you can do small warm-up exercises in order to open yourself up again to the social environment. And one of them is the one that someone mentioned already, arms up in the air. Just walk around like this for 2 minutes in a public space. That'll make yourself laugh, that'll make you open up again and make you feel lighter. The other thing that you can definitely do is actually meet someone and then reveal that you're feeling a bit down. And that's a really beautiful thing to say. And it is kind of a huge compliment that you came up to someone, even though you felt down and you didn't really have a great emotional state. That'll actually feel special to the person. That means that you really wanted to meet them. So you can share that and thereby let the steam off a little bit. I did this a lot in my life where I just told people that I didn't really have a good day, that I felt pretty stifled and not very communicative. And that's a great way to start a conversation, because then they feel like part of your coming back to life, and they will want to help you get back into a social vibe. And that's one way to start the conversation. Okay, let's have Richard. I would go for it 100%. The cool thing is that once you get good, once you get charismatic, once you get social swag and vibe, people will start giving you eye contact. Unfortunately, that doesn't happen a lot in the beginning when you're just getting started. And if you wait for people to give you eye contact when you still don't have that natural flowing vibe, you're gonna wait for the rest of your life. And that's what a lot of people unfortunately do. They say, no, I want it to happen naturally. I just wanna wait till I meet someone like that, and they can spend 10 years and get well into the second half of their life without ever meeting someone special. In the beginning, you need to be the one driving the interactions and starting them, and yeah, getting yourself in front of people, even when there's not a very clear invitation to approach. You have the right to talk to people as long as you do it respectfully, and you need to do that in order to get to the point where you have the confidence that attracts people naturally. But that's something we go in much deeper in the program, where we talk about nonverbal communication and how your voice, how your eye contact, how your body language can support you. There's a lot to learn here. We can't cover it, obviously. And the cohort starts in March. If you want to join in, please book that call and we'll have you talk to the team. Let's have Munsu and then Akash, and then we're slowly gonna wrap up. Yeah, let's take this on. Actually, two parts to the answer here. The first one is, even if you get extremely good at social skills, you will still have at least 50% flake rate where people will not follow up with you. That's just part of the game. You need to accept that people, after they go home and they have had other experiences and they're not in the moment anymore, it's just really, really unlikely for them to remember you as vividly as they did in the moment, even if they decided in the moment to go. And that's also the reason that ideally you want to actually arrange a date, arrange a follow-up during the interaction. And that should be a goal for you, to say, hey, if you want to meet up, let's actually plan something. And of course, there's a lot of preparation that's necessary for that. You need to know what you would like to do. And so you have to have some ideas in the back of your head of different dates that you would like to go on, and then just ask that person out right away on the spot. And once they committed to that, that's a much bigger obstacle than to flaking later. And second of all, you want to make the interaction as intense and as emotional as possible. It doesn't mean you have to touch. It doesn't mean you have to make them laugh. It doesn't mean you have to get them to agree to a date. But just make sure you use the time that is available to have as strong of an impression as possible of your personality. What I see a lot is people taking numbers and then just saying goodbye, right? If there's still time, if you're still in the same train, let's say, or waiting at the same station, you want to use that time and share more about yourself, find more about the match, and why waste that time to strengthen the connection, right? And so that's the mindset I would suggest for you. Just make sure you get the most emotionally charged and intense experience out of the opportunity that you have, because that is gold. Having the other person in front of you one-on-one, as we said in the beginning, is a golden opportunity, because here you can really show your strength, you can show your character, you can show all that you have to offer, the value, and you want to do that to the max. That's going to make it most likely that they'll actually want to date you afterwards. And then second, as I said before, if you feel like they actually want to meet you again, just arrange the date right then and there, which means think about already what that person might enjoy, what you enjoy, and then make a plan, find a time, ask them not just for a number, but also say, hey, let's actually arrange this right now. Are you free on Saturday? I'd love to go this and this place. That's one way you can frame it, instead of asking, like, do you want to go out with me? Which is a bit of a pressurizing situation. Just say, I want to go to this and that place. You can join me if you like, right? That's like more of a statement, subtle reframing, which makes it much less pressure for the other person. And so this is something you want to practice a few times, because the first time you're going to be nervous about it. You don't even know when you're free. You don't know what you want to do. So practice that a few times. And when you go out next time to meet new people, have a date idea and a date slot in your calendar in your mind. Something that you want to do anyways, ideally. And then you just offer that. Again, it's a gift. It's an opportunity for the other person. I want to check out this art gallery. There's Berlinale next week, the film festival. I want to go to this and that movie. I've got an extra ticket. If you like, you can join me. That's a great way to actually arrange the date right then and there.